Climate change is literally an existential threat to our nation and to the world. This is an emergency, and I will look at it that way. I said last week, and I'll say it again loud and clear. As president, I'll use my executive powers to combat the climate crisis.
Well, that was President Biden in Massachusetts yesterday announcing his intention to bypass Congress again to push through his green climate change agenda. But he stopped short of formally declaring climate change a national emergency, something Democrats have been pushing him to do. Joining me right now is Arkansas Congressman and House Financial Services Committee member French Hill. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. Your reaction to the president's description of this agenda and his plans to push it through regardless. He doesn't have the same kind of upset, it appears, when it comes to the pressure American families are feeling. 40-year high inflation, higher interest rates. He wants to insert higher taxes as well.
Right. Good morning, Maria. Great to be with you. Yeah, Joe Biden is ignoring the real crises facing American families, which are high inflation, trying to fill up their gas tanks every week, the open border, which is definitely a national security crisis on our southwest border. These are things that he's ignoring and not prioritizing, and that's why he's at a 30% approval rating. And on an international basis, let's talk about climate change. If climate change is in fact an existential threat to the globe, then why does he let China, Russia, India, most other countries outside Europe and the United States off the hook for things that emit carbon? He should be promoting an international nuclear energy policy. He should be telling China and Russia and India not to burn coal, but to switch to natural gas, switch to nuclear. So it's just not credible what he said in Massachusetts yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, then there's John Kerry. John Kerry is on his private jet, with all of those emissions. And he's the one who's telling us what an emergency this is. Congressman, who is this president listening to? I mean, who is telling him that the climate change agenda should be pushed through no matter what, even if you don't have supportive lawmakers?
Well, two lawmakers that happen to really support climate as an existential threat, and it's the only thing they're focused on, happen to be from Massachusetts. John Kerry, Ed Markey. He listens to AOC when she's not having a fake handcuffing out at the Supreme Court. She's busy talking about how the world is going to be underwater in 5 years. So he's not listening to people that have a rational understanding of the math and science around how to decarbonize over a transition period while we still have consumers and industry fastened to a fossil fuel industry that's essential. He didn't fly to Saudi Arabia on a solar-powered plane. He burned more fuel flying over there and back than he did in cutting a deal to have the Saudis pump more oil. So it just doesn't make sense, and the hypocrisy really stinks.
So, I mean, does he understand that the policies that the Democrats have been pushing through have stoked inflation? We have an inflation timeline. We know that the consumer price index is now above 9%. The producer price index is above 10%. Congressman, you sit on the House Financial Services Committee. You've been critical about all of the stimulus, including the Federal Reserve, and the Fed's failure to raise interest rates sooner. Now the Fed is going to be raising interest rates again next week. We're expecting another 75 basis points hike. They're slamming on the brakes now after all of that spending over the last year took inflation to 40-year highs.
Well, they got a late start. We remained too stimulative in monetary policy, which means we were buying almost $1 trillion on an annualized basis of governments and government agencies, and we had zero interest rates. And we've had zero interest rate environment, really accommodative environment, for a decade. And when you combine that with the unprecedented federal spending, that's why Democratic economists join me in my opposition to more federal spending and a more prompt aspect of moving the Fed up to a normal interest rate environment. We're late, and that's why the brakes are being thrown on now. If we'd started back in the fall of 2020, early 2021, we would not be confronted with the anguish that Jay Powell faces today.
And yet this president continues to go soft on policies around China. He is considering lifting the tariffs on Chinese Chinese goods coming into this country. He has already canceled the China initiative. And the Chinese Communist Party is warning Nancy Pelosi not to visit Taiwan. It seems like President Biden is carrying the CCP's water on this. Watch this.
Mr. President, do you think it's a good idea for Speaker Pelosi to travel to Taiwan this summer?
Well, I think that the military thinks it's not a good idea right now, but I don't know what the status of it is.
He doesn't know the status of the trip after the CCP warned her not to go to Taiwan, Congressman.
Sure, Maria, you've been strong on thinking about China now, not just as an economic and trading rival, but as a real potential national security threat in the years ahead. So America's policy posture has changed, and I credit Donald Trump for a lot of that leadership in pivoting away from a 30-year policy is that somehow that China would be a partner of the United States and be a constructive force in global affairs. Democrats and Republicans in the House are unified in changing our policy focus on China. And it's not just because of their genocidal policies with the Uyghurs, it's also because of their militarization of the Taiwan Strait. So we've had other members of Congress go and visit our trading partner and great economic ally, Taiwan. And this is the time where we need to be showing support for freedom on the Taiwan Strait.
Well, I mean, there's also this decades-long theft of intellectual property from American businesses. There has been no acknowledgement whatsoever about the origins of COVID. The CCP will not allow us into China and the Wuhan lab to do a true investigation. They cornered the market on PPE that we needed and covered up this crisis. Why won't Joe Biden push China and the Communist Party on all of these issues?
He should. He should follow President Trump's roadmap that was laid out, which was a change in strategy. And let me be clear, it's not because America is changing our strategy. We're reacting to the Chinese Communist Party's change in their posture on economics, on trade, on militarization in North Asia, and in lack of being constructive. Right now, they're the largest buyer of oil from Russia. That's what we need is a change in policy, and Joe Biden should lead it.
Yeah, and he also sent oil to China and other countries from the strategic reserve. Congressman, we'll be watching all of that. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much. French Hill joining us this morning in D.C. Thank you, sir.